All right, all right. I am super excited to be talking about a very important topic today for your nature journaling and for my nature journaling, and that is words. You're already an expert and you probably have tens of thousands of hours already practicing writing, whereas you might not have that many hours practicing drawing or watercolor or things like that. So why don't we leverage our writing and use it for all of its potential in our nature journals? So I'm going to be talking about some ways we can do that, and I'm going to be showing you some examples from my nature journal pages and reading some of them, including some pretty exciting journals, some pretty exciting trips that I've been on. And we're going to do a couple exercises, so make sure you have some writing tools available, hopefully just your regular nature journal. If not, whatever type of little pad and pencil, anything like that will work. So we're going to jump right into it, and I'm going to start with reasons why I think words are so powerful. First of all, they are fast. So you can get a lot of information down with a few words really quickly, whereas it might take you a really long time to draw something. So everybody's heard the saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. But in nature journaling, if you have to draw that picture might be not, it might not be worth 1,000 words, because you might be able to capture everything in that picture in a few words that will take a lot less time. So for example, I was trying to nature journal while my friend was fishing for sharks, and this shark that he caught, it regurgitated a bunch of food. And even though you might be able to tell from this really quick drawing that's what's going on, all I had to do was write the word puke and then quickly describe that it puked up a bunch of partially chewed sand crabs and a red crab. How long would it take me to draw accurately enough a leopard shark vomiting a bunch of partially chewed sand crabs and red crabs? Whereas I could write that sentence in probably 10 seconds. So first of all, writing is very fast when you're nature journaling. And if, for example, you only see a bird for a few seconds, it might be faster to write some description of it, such as the color, that you might not have enough time to pull out your watercolor kit and paint that yellow there, but you could write the word yellow really quickly. So that is one of the first really big advantages of words. I'm going to look over here at the chat. I see that Angie is here. Hi, Angie. Thanks for joining in. Anyone else who's joining in on the live, post a comment over there in the chat. Let me know how you're doing today, where you're tuning in from, and how often you use, what percentage of your journal pages are words. Because remember, nature journaling, it's a nature journal page should be like a curry. There should be multiple ingredients mixed in there. And if it's just paintings, that's fine. That's beautiful. Nature art is beautiful. But this is one of the things, having writing, having words, and having numbers or quantification or diagrams is one of the things that sets nature journaling apart just from regular art. And Debbie is tuning in from Virginia. Hi, Debbie. Good to see you. And so let's jump right back into these reasons of why words. So I mentioned they're fast and they are also accessible. So this is amazing because most of you have probably been writing since you were a really young kid and you probably have a lot of practice with it. So you're already an expert, and the tools are very simple. You could have the cheapest pen and just a piece of paper or a beat up notepad, and that will be, ooh, this one actually went through the washing machine. All you need is a really simple notepad. You don't need watercolors, you don't need brushes, you don't need special pens or anything like that. So writing is super accessible, and that is reason number 2. Reason number 3 is that writing can be very precise. So I could say something in my writing that I might not be able to depict very clearly with my drawing. So for example, this page right here, I have a vulture flying, and I wrote getting closer. So how would I show that with a drawing? That might be really challenging to show that that vulture is getting closer, maybe with a sequence of drawings and the vulture getting bigger. But with 2 words, I could very precisely explain what is happening there. So words can be very precise, which is great for a record and for communication. So when you go back to like a really old journal and you read something that you wrote that's describing that place, it can communicate that information as a record very clearly to you. For example, that's why we use writing for our metadata. So I know all of this is writing, Bodega Bay, Creek Inlet, 2 hours after high tide. How would I show 2 hours after high tide in a drawing? It's possible, but it would probably be very challenging and it wouldn't be very precise. So writing can be precise, and that is the third reason why I think it is a powerful thing to use in our nature journals. I'm just going to block this person that looks like they're posting random stuff. And say hi to Jean. Hi, Jean. And Jean is saying about 50-50 words, pictures, and Debbie is saying about 70. And that is great if you're just starting with drawings and diagrams. For a lot of people that, like I mentioned, have experience with writing since we're kids, it's a great way to jump into nature journaling that way. Okay, so we've got they're fast, they're accessible, precise. And the other thing, and I think this is really, really important, is that writing parallels thought. So a lot of our thinking is basically in words. And so it's really easy to use words to put our thoughts on the paper. And putting our thoughts on the paper allows for a lot of great things, a lot of the things that we try to do in nature journaling. John Muir Laws talks a lot about externalizing our thinking, putting our thoughts on the paper, how we can use that for metacognition, how we can use that for venting. So for example, if I am having a challenging time drawing something and it doesn't come out the way I want, I can vent on my paper. I can write, dang it, this drawing didn't come out the way I wanted. And that just gets that out of my head. So the fact that writing parallels thought, that's reason number 4, is super powerful thing that we can use, that a lot of other journaling techniques use, a lot of other writing and therapy techniques use the fact that words parallel thoughts very closely. Whereas drawings, like if I just showed you these drawings on this page right here, these, parallel my observations. They parallel sort of the visual processes of me noticing something in nature, but they don't super closely parallel my thinking. Whereas here, even the way that I used question marks parallels my thinking and shows sort of like what I am trying to understand. And that is one of the things that we can do with words that I don't think we can do with drawings. And that allows for question asking, which obviously is a huge part of using words in our nature journal, is question asking. And I have talked about like, how can we think of drawings as questions? And that's sort of maybe a little bit on the philosophical end. And I think it is possible to use drawings like questions, but when it comes to asking questions and having curiosity about the world, there's no way to do that besides with words. And so that's because words parallel thought and questions are thoughts. And questions are one of the most powerful aspects of nature journaling. And we absolutely 100% need words to dive deeply into that. And if you've seen some of my other videos, I have like a taxonomy of questions, I think the video is called, and multiple videos about how to ask better questions. There's other great thinkers out there and other great books about question asking, and that's 100% with words. You can try to use drawings for asking questions, but it's really a thing of words. And then, like I said, there's a bunch of metacognitive tools. So then the 5th benefit of using words and why we should be using words and leveraging words in our nature journal is the aesthetic reason. So I will give an example. One historic example is, hold on, let me answer someone in the comments here. Someone on Facebook said the internet is Yes, you can always join in and watch this later. There will be a recorded version on Facebook or on YouTube, so don't worry if you can't catch it now. Thanks for trying to join in. Oh, Terri is here also, trying to do more words, not many yet. Good awareness around where you're at and what you want, where you want to grow. So one example of the aesthetic aspect of words is a historic example. So historically in Islam, in the religion of Islam, certain interpretations of Islam have determined that representations of things in life, such as people's faces or animals, accurate depictions of animals, were not considered okay. So what happened is all of these art forms, like in Turkey, for example, shifted to using calligraphy and using the written word as an art form. And that flowered into this huge, huge artistic, renaissance and realm where writing was the main artistic outlet. And so you can look up some beautiful ways that Arabic calligraphy was used, and how much energy got put into making beautiful words. Another example that I always come back to is Leonardo da Vinci. So if you look at one of Leonardo da Vinci's pages, even if you can't read what he's saying, let me find a good one here. Even if you can't read what he's saying, I would say that those words are playing an aesthetic role in the overall composition of this page. Even though I can't read what he's saying there, I still appreciate the way that text is creating this composition of this page. I think it's very beautiful. I'll talk about that a little bit more at the end. And then I'm going to give another example from Japanese woodblock prints. Let's see if I can find a good one here. This is from the artist Kuniyoshi. And a lot of these Japanese woodblock prints use text in a way that I think is aesthetic as well. Obviously, calligraphy has been developed highly in Japan, but here you can see there's a block of text up here. And I would consider that an aesthetic element. There's also these signatures and ways that text is incorporated into these blocks here. And I think these are even including text there. So Japanese woodblock prints, look at the way these words are here. These could be, I think these might be labels of the different characters involved, and this whole block here. And then you can see these other labels here. So in my opinion, that text, those words, make these more aesthetically interesting works of art. So that's reason number 5. You can use text as part of your composition in your nature journal. I think it can be very beautiful. Here's some pages that I'm going to be talking about more later, but the text plays an important aesthetic role as well, visually aesthetic. So then last but not least, number 6, and this is the one that I think a lot of people think about when we talk about this subject, is words can be artistic in their own right. So you can create beautiful, and it doesn't matter like how it's written. I'm not talking about the visual aesthetics. I'm talking about the beauty of the words and the beauty of the sound and the beauty of the meaning. So both of those can be looked at separately. Just the sound, the way the words feel in your ear and feel when they come out of the mouth. And there's a lot of amazing things in all languages that have been developed around how to build that up, the beauty of the sound, and then also the meaning. And so this is something that we can all definitely grow in our nature journaling, is using maybe more poetry or creative nonfiction to make our words more beautiful and more artistic in their own right. So those are the 6 reasons that I just briefly came up with around why I think words are powerful in our nature journaling. And I'm going to share a couple things of mine, and then we're going to go through all 6. We're going to go through all 6, and I'll give examples, more examples, and we'll do a couple little exercises there. I see Leslie is here joining in. Hi, Leslie. Good to see you. And Leslie uses between 40 to 100% words in her nature journal. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, cool. I'm going to switch to my document camera and talk about some of these different examples. And then we're going to do some exercises. So make sure you have your nature journal on hand and are ready, ready to go. I think that fits pretty well. Am I on the right microphone? Oh, I've been using the wrong. Sorry if I didn't sound as good before. I was using the wrong microphone. Hopefully I sound better now. Okay, so first we're going to talk about speed. So I'm going to give some examples from this nature. I'm going to close this one here and give some examples from this nature journal. Oh, I know. I have some examples in this nature journal about speed. Actually, that's more narrative. I'll come back to that one later. There's just so many examples. Sometimes it's hard for me to figure out which to show first. I think here what will probably be best will be these fish and these birds. So here it's not a ton of words, but you can see this fish, for example, was extremely fast, and I never really got, it was in the tide pool. So if you saw my episode on Wednesday where I was nature journaling in a tide pool in Costa Rica, then you saw me when I was nature journaling here at these tide pools. And this fish right here was moving so fast. So I tried to get a sketch of it, but it's not very accurate. But I included information here, and it says, faster silvery fish reminds me of a little mullet. And then on this one, I used words to describe the tail, reddish tail, and that it was skittish. On this one, nose more blunted, dull colors, is same as little yellow question mark. I wasn't sure if it was the same as this other one I was seeing that was small and yellow. And I do the same with my bird journaling. So a lot of times birds are moving very quickly. So you won't get a chance to see that much of them. And so you can use words to help capture that information. So the exercise that we're going to do actually is I'm going to put an object out, and we're going to have a time limit to write about it. So get your page ready. I'm trying to figure out what page I'm going to put this on, a new page. Get a page ready for writing, and I'm going to put an object here under the camera that we can all look at together, and we are just going to quickly write some one-word descriptions. So one-word descriptions could be things like, for example here, skittish is describing a behavior. A color could also be a description. So we're going to practice just using a bunch of one-word descriptions in a 30-second time frame. So get your page ready. I have to get a new page here. Where is my current journal? Oh, this is my current journal, duh. All right, I'm gonna get a fun writing tool. And I'm gonna set a timer. Oops, that's the calculator. I'm not putting the thing out because I don't want to give you extra time to work on it. All right, so the timer's ready. That's ready. Hopefully you're ready. All right, I'm starting the timer. Now see how many one-word descriptions you can come up with for this object right here. And I might move it a couple times. And let's just go for quantity, not quality. Okay, cool. So ideally you got more than 3 word descriptors for this. and just practicing. Remember, this is an exercise you can do with yourself every single time you go nature journaling, or you could do it at home. Just practice coming up with a bunch of words to describe something. Sometimes it's fun also to look in a thesaurus afterwards and just list a whole bunch of synonyms for one of your descriptors, maybe one of the descriptions that you use. That can be really fun as well. Oh, one benefit of writing that I didn't point out is that you can talk about tastes, smells, and sounds, which are all three of those are really hard to show visually. My hot chocolate made me think of that. It sounds like a couple people on Facebook are having trouble viewing this live. So just, yeah, come back and see the recording, and you can always find it on YouTube as well on my channel. Okay, so now that we spent 30 seconds with coming up with some descriptions, let's actually do another object, same thing, and then we're going to do questions after that. So get ready for another 30 seconds of just writing descriptions. And here is our new subject now. All right, let's do one more thing like that really quickly, and then we will go on to questions. Let me grab one more object. Oops. I will hold this one. Oh, I will hold this one up. Actually, that's a little bit small. Let's find something else. Some of you have probably seen these objects multiple times because I reuse some of these objects on the Nature Journal show. So I'm going to start a 30-minute timer. Come up with as many descriptive words for this object as you can. Pretend like you're doing, as if you were, doing gesture sketches of it. How would you just capture this object in words? 30 seconds. All right, great. Now what we're going to do is we're going to practice writing down questions about each thing. So I'm going to go back to object number 1. And if you want to write your questions next to your descriptions, sometimes that can be useful. Your descriptions or your observations can often lead to your questions. So we're going to start with this thing here. And instead of 30 seconds, we're going to have a minute and see how many questions. This is a really good nature journaling exercise. And I can tell when people have been doing this a lot in their nature journaling, how they get better at it. And seeing how many questions someone can come up with about something in a limited amount of time is a really interesting test to do. And some people can be maybe better at it, like kids might be better at it at first, but it's definitely something you get better at with practice. So we're going to set the timer for 1 minute, and we're going to come up with as many questions about this object as we can. And remember, don't grade yourself. Don't start grading yourself on like, oh, that's a dumb question. Just list as many questions as you can. Go. All right, that might feel like a really, really short amount of time, but let's just talk about that really quickly. And it should feel challenging. And I'm going to give you a couple tricks that can make you even better at this task. I'll read some of my questions. So a lot of times people start with why questions. That's pretty common. And I'll get into that more because writing parallels thought, and humans often think in sort of a narrative way, and why questions lead to narratives, which can be confusing when it comes to science and making accurate predictions. But it's good for memory, and it's often the way the human brain works automatically. So I asked, why is it purple? Then I asked, how dry? Why pokey? Predators, pollinators, edible, what's inside, age, taste, what is it made from, is it alive? So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 questions in 1 minute. So that's pretty good. Could be better, could be worse. And what I recommend doing is sometimes just practicing purely quantitatively. How many questions can you come up with in 1 minute? So a couple tricks here. One-word questions are really awesome, and being able to do anything quickly in your nature journaling is going to be really beneficial. So for example, I could just write this, age, question mark. And with that one word and a question mark, that is so much right there. That is the beginning of a very interesting line of inquiry. And you could ask this question about almost anything. Super important, and it's so much condensed into one word. So I highly recommend, whenever possible, figuring out what your one word questions are. That way also, if you do a competition, if you compete with like a little kid doing this exercise, like a grandkid or some kid in the neighborhood that nature journals, you can dominate them by knowing a bunch of one word questions. So if you need to prove your nature journaling chops against some little whippersnappers, I highly recommend memorizing as many one-word questions as possible. Also, this will help when you're in a real-life situation and you have like hummingbirds flying past you and stuff like that. Being able to do one-word questions is going to help you out a lot. Okay, cool. So that was good for that. And I will, let's see, give a couple examples of things that I've had to do quickly, where I've used writing quickly in my nature journal. Let me see if I can find some other good examples here. How about let's just go into this Costa Rica trip, which I know I shared this recently, but here's a good example. Okay, so check this out. I was with Muggles. So I didn't have a ton of nature journaling time, but I just started drawing what was closest to me, which is something I recommend. Well, first I actually did this little landscapeito, pretty quick, no watercolor. And then I started drawing what was close to me. So there was this wasp nest right here. So then I noticed this bird calling, and nature is so distracting. And it sounded like it was making an alarm call. You can see the drawing is super basic, but I have small wren alarming. Those 3 words give a lot of information. Even if I just put the word alarming, that could give me the information that begins this story. And so I made an arrow coming down here because the next moment after hearing this alarm, I saw what looked like an accipiter. So this is a type of hawk that hunts birds. They're super cool, very fast, and it was flying through the forest here, so I couldn't see very much. So I did that really quick drawing, but look at how much information I have in the words. Spotted, small, hawk, accipiter. I should probably put a question mark behind accipiter. And then I can't even tell really what I wrote. I think I wrote barely viewed, so that I know that information was very basic. Like I didn't see it very much. Then I tried to draw this. This is probably the most challenging part to draw here. Flew and caught something from tree. So this event probably happened in a fraction of a second, but with my words, I can put so much information, and even just adding that question mark that I'm not totally sure what happened. And then the last thing that happened is another type of bird species alarmed on it. So most of this story right here is held together by the words. And this whole story could have happened in less than a minute. That's not enough time to do an illustration. That's not enough time to count feathers on a bird or to even pull my watercolor kit out. It is enough time to write down this information. So don't leave these things out of your nature journal. If you're drawing a flower, if you're doing a beautiful illustration of a flower because the flower's not moving and something like this happens in the background, at the very least, use your words to capture it, because these are the kind of events that will be really important and interesting to you later on. And then I analyzed it afterwards, and I pretty much used all words. So this is after the bird's already gone. I can still use words and go through this whole process. Which raptor? What did it catch? How did it see that? What does it usually eat? And then I thought I saw a dangling form, snake-like. Why did I see so few raptors here growing up? So this is sort of like a slightly unrelated question, or sort of like, connecting to memory. It reminds me of 15 minutes later, heard the guaco near the house. Also heard it last night. Feeds primarily on snakes. Ran down to see it. So I don't know if these two birds are correlated, but I did hear a bird later on see it and identify it. That is called a laughing falcon. It's called a guaco in Costa Rica. And I'm not sure if it's the same bird, but there's some things in my mind that want me to think it was the same. So anyways, that just shows how this whole nature journaling session was mainly put together by words. And I could have done like a more detail. I could have looked this up online and done like a painting from Pinterest or something like that. But instead, I focused on just like what I was seeing in the moment. And I think that there's a lot that you can do that way. And words are really helpful for that. Oh, awesome. Yvea is here and Esteban is here. Thanks for joining in. Okay, I'll show a couple more examples. We're still talking about how words are helpful for speed. Let's see if I can get some more example. Okay, here's another example. This is something that a lot of people come to nature journaling from birding. And in birding, people use words. People keep lists. And this could be an online list, a digital list, or it could be a written list such as this. So sometimes it's just way faster just to have this running list of the birds that you see. And that's a perfectly legit nature journaling technique. Let me see if I can come up with a couple more examples. How about from one of my waterproof nature journals? So you can see this is a journal where I'm not using watercolor at all, obviously. This is waterproof paper. I'm using ink, and look how much writing I'm using. The fact that I'm using so much more writing is an indication that writing is often a powerful technique when you're in a hurry or you're in difficult conditions. So if you saw, some people saw that video not that long ago where I nature journaled, oh, these are mushrooms actually, where I nature journaled in the rain. And I took this book on several of those, and you can see how often I use writing for that. This was nature journaling the gopher holes during a storm, and I did use writing a lot for that because it is faster, mainly because it is faster. So that is one of the main benefits of writing. And the next one that we're going to talk about and practice is accessible. So writing is accessible because people already have everything they need for doing it. And most people have been practicing writing for thousands of hours. So all you need is a teeny little thing like this and a simple pen. I'm going to talk about some of the things that I use and don't use. But for example, you have these things already in your house. You don't need to go out and buy watercolor to nature journal with words. So what we're going to do right now actually is take a couple minutes and come up with I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and we're going to come up with a list of all of the writing tools that you have in your house right now. Timer is starting now. So go ahead and just, and remember digital ones. How many writing tools do you have in your house right now? And include some of the digital ones. Do you have sticky notes? Do you have a whiteboard thing on your fridge? If you ask a little kid, all of the walls of your house are probably a writing tool. Do you have a clipboard? Do you have an iPad? Wait, I don't have an iPad. Why did I write that? Okay, great. So that just, reinforces the fact that we all have writing tools all over the house. Okay, so the reason number 3 that words are a powerful nature journaling tool is because they are precise. Reason number 3 is they're precise. I'm not going to go into depth over that one, but words can be more precise than drawings. I'm not going to go into depth over that one. Ooh, I see some interesting comments. Esteban is saying, writing in lines around the drawings. I give some shapes to the written lines. That is super cool. I should have mentioned Vitor Velez, the headless sketcher. I did an interview of him a while ago, and he was just interviewed on the Journaling with Nature podcast with Bethan, and he does an amazing job of using words as an artistic element. I should have mentioned that before. Esteban, thanks for reminding me of that. By writing in lines around the drawings. Very cool. It sounds like Angie has a ton of writing tools around the house. That is a good thing. And okay, so next thing so I mentioned precision. I'm not going to go into depth about that one. Didn't make any exercises for that. Now I'm going to talk about reason number 4 that I think words are really powerful for nature journaling is that they parallel thought. So compared to drawings, I think that words parallel how our mind works. And there's a whole bunch of benefits that can be derived there. So all of the metacognitive things that Jack talks about, all of those are possible because words parallel our thought. So let me see if I can find an example from this Ecuador trip. One thing you can do with words is you can just do a sort of like a brain dump and just sort of like dump a bunch of things that you're feeling. You can vent. You can describe things that are happening like inside your mind that are not visible. So for example, I can draw this plant, but I can't necessarily just draw the things that I'm feeling inside of my body. But I feel like writing them is actually a really powerful way to get them out. Let me see if I can find an example where I'm venting. Oh, here's an example where partly because I'm externalizing my thinking, I was able to notice something that I was wrong about. So for example, I noticed this, this was in the Amazonian side of Ecuador. I noticed this butterfly kept visiting a certain plant. So I asked, what is it doing? And then I started developing this theory that it wasn't feeding and it wasn't laying eggs because I couldn't see the eggs. So I wrote, I can't see it extending its proboscis or laying eggs, but it keeps landing on the Chiricaspi plant. And then I noticed on closer examination, maybe it is laying eggs, but very, very small and spreading them out. So it's really hard for humans to notice themselves being wrong. There's this thing called confirmation bias that happens in our mind and prevents us from seeing things once we already have an idea of what we should be seeing. And writing stuff down, because it parallels your thoughts, it helps you externalize that and notice things that you might not otherwise. The other thing you can do, here's a cool example, is you can put down quotes of things that other people say. So if someone next to you says something, like for example, I was with these Saphira tribes people in Ecuador, and I forget who I was with at this moment, but he was talking about this orchid. I noticed this orchid was growing on the leaf of this other plant. It was literally this size. And the guy said, y así no más crecen, that's as big as they grow. So you hear what someone else is saying and you just copy it down. So those are some examples of how writing parallels your thought. Let me see if I can find one of those examples of where I'm venting. Well, here's sort of an example of venting. So this was a really complicated caterpillar covered in spines, and there was like I guess that there's 250 of them in this huge patch. So I only had a couple minutes to try to draw it before we had to get back on the canoe. But so I wrote down here, not enough time to draw it. Sometimes I'll use expletives or something like that if I'm frustrated about a drawing. So those are examples of how writing parallels your thought, and it can be a good way to vent. And any of those metacognitive benefits of journaling can be used in nature journaling. I see Adriano's joining in from Brazil. Welcome, Adriano. And Kristin Antonio is here. Good to see you, Kristin. All right, so I do want to point out, though, that the fact that writing parallels thought can be a double-edged sword. So because our tendency to tell things as a narrative is really helpful. So like, for example, with that whole story of the bird hunt here, this was really easy to use words to tell this story. However, sometimes we see a story in nature when there isn't a clear story, and we turn it into a story, and this can be really problematic with science and stuff like that. So being aware that because words parallel thoughts very easily, very, very closely, it's easy to create a narrative in your nature journal, which I think is usually a really beautiful thing and really compelling thing. However, it can lead to projection and imagining sort of like purpose in nature, as well as evolutionary storytelling. So let me see if I could have an example of that from this nature journal. Let's see. A lot of times I notice it in myself with pollination. Okay, or here's an example. So I don't know why I was writing about zygodactyl feet. So some birds have 2 toes going forward and 2 toes going backwards, and those include woodpeckers and they include roadrunners. I think I was with a tracking club. So I wrote down, why do roadrunners have zygodactyl feet? So zygodactyl is when there's 2 toes going backwards and 2 toes going forward. Owls also have this. Roadrunners, woodpeckers, things like that. And so whenever you use this question why about things in nature, you're setting yourself up potentially for this danger of evolutionary storytelling or imagining purpose. There's not always an answer to why questions in nature. There's not a reason for everything. So for example, I could nature journal, why do I have nipples? And there might not be a clear answer to that from an evolutionary perspective of why I have nipples. There's like things in nature that don't always have a reason. And I think that can be a really confusing concept. So anyways, here you can see my thought process. Why do roadrunners have zygodactyl feet? What benefit is there for the backwards toes? Why do I think that backwards toes are bad for running? Observation. So I think in nature journaling, the important thing is always to come back to observation. Like, what can we actually see? So in my mind, it makes sense that owls have zygodactyl toes because it helps them like grab onto their prey items. And it also makes sense to me why woodpeckers would have zygodactyl toes, because they hold on to the tree while they're pecking. But an animal that is running, that doesn't make sense in my mind. But the thing is nature is not like engineering. Things don't have like a design goal. And so I don't know why roadrunners have zygodactyl toes. It might not have a reason. So anyways, that's a long way to explain this concept of what can happen in our nature journaling when we're creating a narrative or using words or trying to even use questions to ask things. To remember that we have to be open-minded, and that the way that our brain works often leads us in a direction to try to come up with a story to explain things that don't always have an explanation. All right, I know that was kind of heady or deep, but let's keep going with it here. And the next thing that I'm going to talk about, unless I have like, well, actually, I'll go back to narrative too, because I'll give a good example of narrative. So I just gave an example of how narrative could lead you astray, but here's an example of where it could be really, really fun. Look at this page right here. Look how much of this page is writing. That's because I was nature journaling an action event. I was feeding this lizard. I was feeding one of my pet lizards, and there was so much action that it was really hard to draw. For example, how do you draw a lizard that's standing up on its hind legs and then slamming forward and eating something? Or how do you draw your questions that you have about how that lizard is using its sense of smell, or how it might be using its sense of smell? Those are all things that you can do with writing. And right here you can see I even have some metacognitive stuff. I almost skipped nature journaling today. Glad I stuck with it. Having herps to feed engages me a lot. So this is sort of my own personal process, and including that on your pages is really important. Even if your goal is just to do like, advanced illustrations or whatever, I feel like journaling some of this is really powerful. Here's another one where I'm doing that venting thing. Look how many times I tried drawing this lizard head and it didn't come out the way that I liked. So instead of giving up, or instead of telling myself that I suck at drawing lizards, I suck at drawing animals, I'm only going to do watercolor, or I'm only going to do plants, I wrote this: I'm still struggling with the head shape. Just by writing that down, you get it out of your mind. And that's a really powerful way to get your thoughts onto paper and out of your head. Okay, reason number 5 is that words can be aesthetic on the page. So I will give some examples. Look at this page. Even if you can't read it, the text creates like a nice aesthetic there, I would say. Same here. Same here. Let me give some more examples. I showed you some examples from Leonardo da Vinci, but having words on the page, I think, creates an aesthetic that is nice. Let's see if I have some more. I have more examples, but it gives an aesthetic that I think is really nice. And the important thing is to think about your page in blocks. So, for example, let's go back to. I need to read some of this. But let's go back to this page right here. So there are a couple major blocks here. So there's a block here for this illustration. There's a little block here for the title. There's a long block here, another block here, and then there's sort of this, Tetris shaped block. So when you're thinking about composition, that's what you want to think about. And I think what we can do right now is quickly practice a couple page layouts and how your words would fit onto that. So what I would recommend is practicing every once in a while, thinking about this and doing it. So get your journal page and make like a couple sketches of what your page looks like. So mine is, I think, 9 by 12. So this is what my spread would look like approximately. If you're using a different format, like my friend Mark Simmons uses a book that's sort of more like this probably. Either way, draw something like that and do a couple versions. So you can practice some of what these layouts would look like and how your text would be an aesthetic element on there. Okay, so one really simple thing to do first is to divide the page into thirds. That often is considered aesthetically appealing. That doesn't mean it has to be like this. It could just be like this, and this 2/3 could be one block. So for example, one really easy thing to do would just be to fill this part with illustrations and this part with text. And you can simulate how text would look on the page by just doing sort of these scribbly lines. And then this could just be whatever images up here. And then maybe a title here. So right there is one composition you could do and how you could think about including the text on the page as an aesthetic element. Here on this one, maybe what I could do is I could do an image here, and I have lines going to text here describing more specific things about it. And then this could just be solid text up here. Maybe that's just my stream of consciousness description of things. And then down here could just be a landscapeito. So if you want to work on like the aesthetics of your nature journal pages and think about how text can be part of that, I recommend doing dozens of these. Another cool one can be that requires a little bit more planning is you could have a image that sort of overlaps with the words. That could be sort of like a landscapeito or something, might be the simplest way. And then the words could be coming through. This is kind of more on the end of what like Vitor Velez, the headless sketcher, does. And you could have the words coming through like this. All of these compositions could happen organically or more in a more planned way. There's sort of a spectrum there. So this would be a cool composition as well. And then over here, let's just say there's multiple elements. And this is sort of going to be like what something that kind of Leonardo would probably do. And then the text is just everywhere behind that. And I really believe that these pages that use the writing this way are more aesthetically interesting than ones that don't. I remember when I was a kid, I saw Leonardo da Vinci's sketchbook pages and I was like, that's my favorite artist. And then I saw the Mona Lisa and I was like, that's boring. And so I think part of it is the way that Leonardo da Vinci uses text on those pages. I think it's aesthetically much more interesting. So let me go through a couple of his pages and we can talk about how he does it. And I think a lot of times he's not planning his composition out. It's sort of more, this is not all of these are from his actual pages. I don't think he is planning it out in advance. It's just sort of his process. So this looks like it is the tongue, the human tongue, but look at how, do you see the blocks? Remember what I said, everything is blocks in composition. So look, for example, how he has this column here. And he has all of these, and these have sort of just organically, he's filled in the page, but he's keeping things in blocks. There's only a little bit of drawing here, but he's keeping things in blocks. And it's not just like the whole page all the way across. I think that is aesthetically more interesting. And look here again, it's in blocks mixed in with the drawing. And in some cases, you can experiment with this, where it goes right up to the edge of the form, or in other cases, you can have it have its own block that kind of keeps it separate from the drawing. These pages, in my opinion, look more interesting and more beautiful because of the writing that he has incorporated on there. Obviously, this would not be as amazing of an illustration if it didn't have the writing, in my opinion. And look at how he conforms the writing to the top of the circle up there, but here it has its own separate block. And he also is following margins. So this is something you can do in your nature journaling. And what I recommend is either a graphite pencil or a Tombow pen for putting in these boxes in advance of your drawing if you want to follow these margins, because that will make the writing look more aesthetic as well. So hopefully you've drawn some of your own versions of these out. I'm just going to finish this last example here for myself, and I highly recommend practicing this kind of stuff as much as possible. It's definitely going to make the way you incorporate your writing more interesting. Here I'm going to do a 2-page spread. So I'm going to think about how this goes across 2 pages in a way that that makes sense. And then I will have like a landscapeito going all the way across. And then words at the top. Without boxes. A lot of times I do use text boxes where I actually do lines around the text. Let's see how I've done it here. But mostly I think in this journal, I have the text sort of open and the images in boxes. But you can see here how I fit the text into the space available. Let's see if I have any other examples. Here's an example where I was nature journaling in the field in a really challenging situation, but I still try to just fit the text into the spaces available. Here's an example, nature journaling a recipe, a cooking recipe, and I'm basically just mixing words in with the images and using arrows as well. Oh, Cindy's here. Hi, Cindy. Yes, I highly recommend the exercise for practicing composition. It's a really good one. Okay, so we practiced doing blocks, thinking about blocks and the aesthetics of blocks when incorporating text into your nature journal. Now, here's all these examples where I didn't follow that rule, but for the most part, it is a good rule to think about your text as a block, as another element in your composition. So the next thing is, and the very last one is the words are artistic in their own right. Obviously, people think of poetry a lot. Haiku can be a really easy one to incorporate into your nature journal. I don't have any I didn't find any examples of that in time, but I think I have, where is it? I think I have some other sort of examples that are creative that I'll read to you just to give you a feeling for it. So I will actually just start with, let's see here. I think there's a good one here. My sticky notes started falling out. So here's an example that I did that is a little bit more creative use of words. I was trying to capture, I was in the cloud forest in Ecuador, and I was just trying to capture how, I think the word that kept coming to my mind was exuberant, that life was there, and there was just bromeliads and moss and stuff growing everywhere. So I looked up synonyms for the word exuberant, and then I just wrote them out here. Exuberant, excessive, fecund, fertile, profuse, copious, abundant, lavish, lush, rampant, teeming, prolific, riotous, prodigal, opulent, replete with, alive, and tried to be a little artistic with how I wrote it. But you can see here how words can be very, you can use them very creatively, and sometimes just listing a whole bunch of adjectives like that can be a really fun and creative way to, and quick way to capture the feeling of a place. And then at the same time, just inches away, your words can be like a really precise way to describe a bird that you don't have very much time to draw. So for example, these abbreviations are for the colors that I saw: quinacridone sienna, and then I wrote acts like a creeper or a wren, looking for bugs under lichen, tail like a creeper, mellow for a wren, briefest peak of somebody gray. So all of those are ways to use words, and this is another creative way to use words. So I'm going to read a little bit here from this entry in Ecuador, and just give you a little vibe of some of the creative writing that I've done in my nature journal. Let me drink a little bit of hot chocolate first. And then I'm going to show you some of these sketchbooks that have, this one went through the washing machine, but I'll talk about these, and I'll talk about how some of the materials that I like for using words in your nature journal. Almost 2 p.m., sitting here, the Jardín Botánico, surrounded by cacti and bromeliads. The bustle of the city feels distant, even though I can hear a lot of the noise of cars muffled by the screen of foliage. A good place to get away from the headache, the smog, the constant buzz. Here, the buzz is different, organic, chirpy, and whistled. Dark nimbus clouds coalesce dramatically in the sky, and the temperature feels perfect. I love the tropical afternoon thunderstorm threat, and I haven't seen a mosquito yet. The long dead inflorescences of various bromeliads reach over my shoulder. I want to ask them if they think it will rain, but I don't know their language. Maybe I should ask the birds. I hear the metallic hum of a large hummingbird chasing a rival, but I do not see it. So this is the kind of thing, like, I tried capturing some of the essence of that place, and you know, like, this was a while ago. My drawings weren't as good. I was still practicing, and things happen fast, and sometimes your drawings might not be able to capture it. But I really think that words can help capture the atmosphere of a place. And if you're not including little chunks like this in your nature journal, you're missing out on something. So for example, like my page recently where I was at the beach, I did spend a long time. Wait, that's not it. I did spend a long time on this landscapeito that I think has, you know, some of the feeling of the beach. Where is it? Or like this, I did these drawings at sunset, and these are cool drawings and they're interesting, but I did not get that much of the feeling of the atmosphere. This probably took me, at this botanical garden in Ecuador, it probably took me 5 minutes to write this, but I really captured the atmosphere and that experience. So that's something that I think, you know, words are really, really good at. And especially if you don't have as much experience with the visual art side, the words can be really powerful. So I'll read another one like that. Okay, here we go. Here is no, there's so many examples from this. I was doing a lot of writing on this trip. Here, I'll read this one because this was on a canoe trip. I actually dropped this into the river. You can see it got wet up here. And I'll read this. Canoe trip started from Naku, heading down river for overnight. Approximately 80 degrees Fahrenheit, 70% humidity. You're right, it was probably like 90% humidity. Saw one accipiter looking bird of some sort. Lots of balsas. Canoe pulled by 2 guys in front and 1 in back with 7 passengers. Babies, crying kids because parents leaving with us. Shouting, mommy, running to edge of riverbank. Lots of invertebrate tracks on sandbanks. Saw a kingfisher catch a fish. Things are happening fast, so I'm not worried about like punctuation and stuff like that. Lots of backseat canoe driving. Commentary in Quechua. Watch out for that rocks.
Lots of a la pa, which I guess means, my friend translated as, it's sort of like people in English saying dude. Places where trees have fallen, pulling down other trees with lianas. Constant pointing out of sights and sounds. My seat cushion slowly deflating, losing air. Some places, floodplains make it so that the primary forest is far from the river, and then lots of balsa and pindo grow. My eyes are getting blinded by the white paper. Pointed out monkey salt licks. Further downriver, right at the transition to the primary forest, we saw a river otter slither out of the water. Didn't look that much bigger than the California ones. Crazy turquoise butterfly. So we're going down this river in a canoe. This is the Conambo River. It's a tributary to the Amazon. Transition zone, still pindo, balsa, cecropia, but primary starting. So I'm naming some of the species. Species-specific salt licks. Clouds of sweat-seeking wasps, bees, flies followed us from the beach where we ate lunch, but we soon lost them further downstream. Avoiding low bridge of a large fallen tree, passed under, and a bunch of bats flew out, flying ahead downriver. Energy different in primary forest. Shadier, calmer, boat scraping over rocks, sound passing little by little towards back of canoe. Armadillo trail where it crossed the river, avoiding spiny hanging vines, baby on board in mom's lap, more rocks along bank. At one point there was a lot of excitement. We hit a sudden sandbar at high speed and almost tipped. Giant bamboo, more and more water in bottom of canoe. Actually dropped my journal in the sloshing water. Luckily not overboard. That's it. I dropped it into the water that was in the bottom of the canoe. Funny story. One kingfisher with a huge fish in its mouth keeps flying further downriver when we approach, then gets startled again and flies further. This happened at least 5 times. Sci-fi cicada sound. Monkey for lunch. Stopped for a bit at the house of one of Minari's brothers. We were just hanging out until they started setting a table. Soon they brought out boiled plantains and monkey yuca and monkey to eat. Then next they brought out some huge palm grubs and chicha. Feathers on floor, machetes, axes, batteries, daughters cooking, men lounging, pet agouti, jawbones, monkey bits under lid, cotton plant, blowgun, shotgun, dogs, chickens, monkey meat, somewhat chewy, dark, skin like chicken / pork. Not sure how they got the hair off. Later showed head, achiote, plantains, etc. All 5 of us sitting. Kids and girls staring. Hands smell like monkey. Cristobal, name of bird, ? Grubs in a pile. Buy grubs, shy girl. Chicha in huge trash can. Grubs for $5. So in the Amazon, things are really information dense. And what I find is that writing things in an information dense way, or just quickly jotting things down, I can capture so much information here that if I tried to draw all of this, it would be really hard. The next closest thing to this that I think I'm developing is like for this recipe. Where did that one go? So like here you can see I'm getting a little bit better at like sketchnoting and stuff like that. So here I'm using images and words together. But if you really have to, I think words are the fastest way to capture a lot of information quickly. And creative nonfiction is sort of like this forgotten genre that I think is super powerful. And if you look it up, you can learn about it and get sort of like some ideas of how you can use that in your nature journal. And I'm just really grateful that I did all of this writing when I was there. If I had only been focused on trying to get like finished illustrations of things, I probably wouldn't have taken my nature journal out that entire day. So if it weren't for words, this page would be anemic and would not convey the experience. So those are some of the benefits of words. I'm just going to talk about a couple quick products here that I think are beneficial. But one of the main things about words in your nature journal is you don't need special stuff. I've used these in the past. A lot of times what I would do is I would have one of these really small skinny moleskins in my pocket, and then I would have this nature journal in my nature journal bag. If I didn't have time to pull out my whole nature journal, I would just add notes to this. And you can see this one I had with me when I was with the Hadzabe hunter-gatherers. And you can see I do use some sketches, but mostly I use words. And here's a hyena track that I saw when I was with those guys. And this was because I didn't want to pull out my whole journal, but mainly I'm using words in here, tons of words. I'm writing every day. This was often on hikes where we're walking and we're moving quickly. So my writing is almost illegible because sometimes I'm like walking and writing. But these really small moleskins, I think they come in like packs of, 5 or something. Look, I think there's blood on this one. This is blood from a bird that one of the Hadzabe hunter-gatherers shot when I was with them. But these small moleskins come in packs of like 3. They're really easy to fit. You could take this with you on a jog and just have like one pen or a pencil. And that would be a super easy thing to do. And that is one thing I like. I also started experimenting with these Stillman and Burn. This is the same paper as in my regular journal, but slightly smaller. This works pretty good for writing, but the paper quality is probably better than what you really actually need. I used to write a lot with pencil, but don't really recommend that anymore unless it's like in one of these things. I used to also write with microns, but I don't really like them. If you write with a micron, you have to hold it like straight up and down. And that doesn't work for the way that I write. So I don't use these for writing at all. Jelly roll pens can be really fun and work well. So I like those for sketchnoting. And then I've been using fountain pens a lot more. Obviously, I love the Fude de Manin. I think it works great for writing with the skinny side. And then the other thing I really like is using the gray from these Fudayaku pens. As you can see, I ran out of the gray completely already on this one. For if you have to do any writing in the rain, Write in the Rain is a good choice. I've done reviews about these before. Here's a nature journal that I did going down the Grand Canyon for 30 days. And one of the things I want to show you is in here, I have pages that I did at night while we did the final section of the Colorado River at night. And I actually stayed up all night long nature journaling. And here you can see that I'm trying to sketch by moonlight. I also have a clipped on light on my book, but everything that I'm seeing on the landscape is by moonlight. And I did use words a lot to describe these weird sounds we were hearing in the water. So you can see here, I'm also including the mile markers because we were trying to navigate and remember where we were. This was at 11 p.m. I'll read this part to you so you can experience a little bit of what that was like. Clouds starting to get a little thicker around the moon, but still very bright. A few more hours probably until the deadly docks. The second shift of oars people now, and quiet among the passengers except for some faint whispering. Just heard another splash, exactly like we heard before. 11 o'clock p.m. A couple more sketches, trying to draw this as we're slowly drifting downriver, some of the landscape. Later that night, after trying unsuccessfully to sleep, things look very different here. Another cannonball splash sound, chud ×2. Some type of horizontal wall close to water level, stretching on both sides of the river, very steep banks. 4 a.m., trying to use one of the zebra brush pens instead of the pencil, which seemed pretty noisy. I was writing and drawing with this pencil, and then I was worried that it was too loud. For me, I see James Coleman is here. For me, the Write on the Rain paper, I've tried. This right here was the Space pen. It's supposed to be, it's like made by a company called Fisher. It's supposed to work in the water. It's a ballpoint pen. And I didn't like it. I used it for a while. It even bled a little bit, which is obviously not good for something that's supposed to be waterproof. Then I used a Write in the Rain ballpoint pen, which I can't find right now. But what I found I really like is these Prismacolor pencils. I think pencil works way, way better. So this was an extremely wet day, and I had dirt on my hands, and this pencil worked way better. And it was the same on the Colorado River. You can see I started, there's so much sand in here. I started with ballpoint pen, and these pages are okay. The writing is okay, and the drawings are okay, but it's very faint, I would say. And then once I switched to, this pencil, it's so much better. So this is one of the most infamous rapids in the Colorado River, and I wouldn't have been able to capture this with the pen. And I'll show you that Prismacolor pencil I use for water. This pencil, it will smudge on the rain, but you can write with it. As you can see here, you can create legible writing. Where are all the gophers? And you can create drawing, and you can get values way more quickly. And it's just way easier to use. I don't like the ballpoint pens, the waterproof ballpoint pens. I don't like those anymore. So originally I was going to actually be interviewing Rebecca Rolnick today. She does a bunch of stuff around how to use words in your nature journal, and unfortunately she wasn't able to make it. I'm just going to share her website right here so you can check it out. She has weekly workshops all about how to use words in your nature journals, and it's really cool. And she's also going to be doing like a whole class on how to use words in your nature journal that you can sign up for on her website. And in case you didn't know, I do have a Patreon. A lot of you are already supporting me on there, which is super awesome. That's the main way that I can make the Nature Journal show possible. I just saw that Gabriella posted a cool thing about how to do poems in your nature journal. But thank you so much for tuning in today. Check out my other videos. I have videos about how to use questions in your nature journal, how to get started with nature journaling, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Next Wednesday, I have another Costa Rica nature journal episode coming out on Wednesday with video from Costa Rica, and a whole bunch more really exciting stuff coming up. And yes, I do. My knee is messed up. It turns out I have a fracture. I've been walking around with a fracture on my patella, and I just got x-rayed. So I'm probably not going to be going on any crazy nature journaling adventures anytime very soon, but I will probably make an episode how to nature journal on crutches. So stay tuned for that. All right, bye everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day and do some writing in your nature journal. It's super easy. You could literally nature journal for 5 minutes, a vegetable that's in your refrigerator, and just get something on those pages. All right, bye.